Hello, everyone. She was the angel they all adored until she started speaking. In the 1990s, Karen Mulder was untouchable. A face sculpted by the gods, a body that walked every major runway, and a smile that lit up Victoria's Secret like a cathedral. She had everything: money, fame, the envy of a generation. The world wanted her. And for a moment, she gave herself completely. But one day, the words came. On live television, she claimed she had been abused, manipulated, drugged, controlled, not by strangers, but by the very people who built her. She said it with poise, with clarity, and then she disappeared. What happened to Karen Mulder wasn't just a breakdown. It was an unraveling, one that exposed the shadows behind fashion's perfect facade, one that made the world look away. This is not just the story of a supermodel who vanished. This is the story of a woman who dared to speak when silence was the price of beauty. And it begins, not in Paris or Milan, but in a quiet town in the Netherlands, long before the angels ever found her. From a young age, Karen felt the weight of invisibility. She was the tall girl at school, too slim, too dreamy, too shy. She often walked alone, head down, a notebook clutched to her chest. She didn't speak much, but she observed everything: faces, voices, small gestures. There was a sensitivity to her, a quiet intensity that the world hadn't yet found a place for. Her beauty wasn't celebrated in her early years. In a town where conformity was safety, her sharp cheekbones and distant gaze made her stand out, and not always in ways that felt kind. Teachers said she was distracted. Other children called her strange. But Karen kept it all inside. She had already begun building the walls that would one day protect her and imprison her. At 15, something changed. A friend sent her photo to a local modeling competition without telling her. She won, almost overnight. Her life shifted, offers came in, agencies called. She was soon flown to Paris, where the fashion world took one look and said yes. They didn't just see potential. They saw a future icon. Her height, her elegance, her aloofness, it wasn't awkward here. It was everything. But Karen didn't arrive in Paris with ambition. She arrived with confusion. This world of cameras, castings, and couture was dazzling. But she had no map. She was a teenager, far from home, with no training, no voice, and no one she fully trusted. Her shyness, once a liability, became part of her mystique. Photographers loved her stillness. Designers loved her quiet. They thought it meant control. What they didn't see was that Karen wasn't posing. She was hiding. As the jobs piled up, so did the pressure. She changed apartments often, traveled constantly, went days without sleep. The lights got brighter, the rooms more crowded. But Karen became more and more withdrawn. She smiled on cue, she walked the runways, but inside, she was drifting further and further from herself. There were signs, even then. She wrote in journals obsessively. She would sometimes disappear between shows, needing hours to be alone. She had panic attacks before fittings, once refusing to leave a hotel room for days. But the industry didn't ask questions. It never did. As long as she performed, she was praised. And Karen, like so many girls before her, learned to confuse performance with love. Underneath the success, a fracture was forming, and no one noticed. Paris in the late 1980s was a city of illusions, and Karen Mulder arrived like a dream too fragile to touch. She was just 17 when she signed with Elite Model Management, one of the most powerful agencies in the world. They didn't ease her in. They threw her into the fire. Within weeks, she was walking in shows she had only seen in magazines, standing under lights she didn't know how to face, dressed in gowns worth more than her childhood home. And yet, the camera loved her. There was something unexplainable about Karen. She didn't move like the others. She glided. She didn't pose, she existed. Her eyes never begged. They dared. Her stillness was electric. Her presence haunted every frame. She became an instant obsession for designers who wanted elegance without arrogance, mystery without force. She shot campaigns for Valentino, Versace, and Claude Montana. Vogue called her the face of modern European beauty. And just like that, Karen Mulder wasn't a girl from the Netherlands anymore. She was an international supermodel. But the success was too fast, too quiet. She didn't chase it. It crashed into her. Every week was a new city. Every morning, a new designer. Her face was everywhere. But she wasn't sure who it belonged to anymore. People talked about her cheekbones, her walk, her voice, but no one asked how she felt. She was always on display but rarely seen. Her parents, proud but distant, didn't know what questions to ask. Her agents kept her busy, promising that the fatigue, the anxiety, the dizziness would pass. They told her to sleep when she could, to smile through the exhaustion, that this was the price of the dream. But Karen hadn't dreamed of this. She didn't want to be worshipped. She wanted to feel safe. Then came the call from Victoria's Secret. At the time, the lingerie brand was evolving. It didn't just want models, it wanted icons. Karen became one of the first faces of the Victoria's Secret angels. Her wings were soft, her eyes sharp. She became the personification of heavenly desire, selling fantasies to millions. But behind the feathered wings was a girl who still hated mirrors. She once told a friend she felt like a stranger in every photo. She couldn't recognize the woman they adored. And she began to fear the moment she would be found out. She was building a career on a foundation that was cracking, and no one around her noticed. Or maybe they did, but silence was easier. At her peak, Karen Mulder wasn't just a model. She was a vision the world couldn't look away from. Her face was everywhere, from the runways of Paris to the billboards of New York. She walked for Chanel, Dior, Valentino, and was the centerpiece of countless campaigns that defined an era. With every step she took, fashion stopped. She didn't walk, she floated, she didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened like it was sacred. And perhaps it was. There was something sacred about her distance, like beauty too pure to touch. She was now one of the Big Six, the elite group of supermodels who ruled the 1990s alongside Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, and Christy Turlington. They were no longer just models. They were celebrities, powerhouses, global faces who could sell not just clothes, but dreams. But even in that circle of extraordinary women, Karen stood apart. She was the quiet storm, the ice queen, the angel with glass wings. Photographers adored her because she gave them moods, not just poses. She could look tragic and regal in the same frame. She could hold sorrow behind her eyes without ever lowering her chin. Fashion editors often called her the melancholy muse. And it wasn't just a nickname. It was prophecy. Her beauty didn't scream, it whispered. And somehow, the whisper was louder. But the peak of her fame was also the beginning of something more fragile. As the lights grew brighter, Karen became more withdrawn. She began to arrive late to fittings. She skipped rehearsals, at shows. She would sometimes look straight ahead, not seeing anyone. People in the industry said she was becoming difficult, but no one asked why. They called it diva behavior. But it wasn't arrogance. It was disorientation. During this time, she was also falling under the control of people who claimed to care for her, but may have seen her only as an asset. There were rumors of manipulation, of someone pulling strings behind her decisions, of Karen being vulnerable, even in her power. But as always, the fashion world moved too fast to look closely, and Karen was too graceful to collapse in public. So she kept walking. She kept smiling. She kept delivering the magic that made editors cry and designers beg. But behind that poise, something was fracturing quietly, invisibly, fatally. The world knew her name, but no one really knew her. Karen Mulder never planned to be a rebel. She didn't seek controversy. But somewhere along the line, her silence became too loud to bear. The girl who once floated through castings and whispered her way through campaigns began to tremble under the weight of what she had seen, what she had endured, and what she could no longer ignore. The industry didn't take it well. There was no room for fragility, no tolerance for introspection. Models were supposed to perform. They weren't supposed to question. They certainly weren't supposed to unravel. But Karen was unraveling, and instead of hiding it, she began to speak. In 2001, she appeared on French television and said the unthinkable, calmly, clearly. She accused high-profile figures in fashion and entertainment of drugging her, controlling her, and abusing her trust. She spoke of hypnosis, of coercion, of a world beneath the runway that no one wanted to admit existed. The host smiled uncomfortably. The audience shifted in their seats. The segment was never aired again. Within days, Karen was labeled delusional. Friends distanced themselves. Agencies dropped her. Headlines didn't ask if she was telling the truth. They asked what was wrong with her. It was easier to write her off as mentally unstable than to question the system she was pointing fingers at. And so, she was silenced not with force, but with dismissal. Her family intervened. Days after the broadcast, she was placed in a psychiatric facility against her will. She was sedated, monitored, explained away. Officially, she was suffering from depression and emotional exhaustion. Unofficially, she had become a threat, not to others, but to a narrative the industry desperately needed to protect. But Karen wasn't seeking revenge. She wasn't staging a campaign. She was trying to survive. She was trying to understand how the dream had turned into a trap. Her claims were disjointed, emotional, hard to verify, but they weren't shouted. They were spoken with the same calmness that once made her a star. And maybe that's what frightened people the most. That she didn't seem angry. She seemed broken. Her defiance wasn't a declaration. It was a dissent, a refusal to keep pretending, a choice to speak, even when no one was listening. And in a way, that was the bravest thing she ever did. Because in a world that rewards silence, speaking up even shakily is the loudest act of resistance there is. After the interview, after the headlines, after the hospital, Karen Mulder did what no one expected her to do. She vanished, not with a farewell shoot or a final catwalk. She simply slipped through the cracks of the world that once adored her. There were no press releases, no statements, no orchestrated exit. She just stopped showing up to shows, to shoots, to herself. But Karen wasn't mourning her career. She was mourning her reality. What she had tried to express on television hadn't been a cry for drama. It had been a desperate attempt to be believed, to be heard. But instead of being met with empathy, she had been locked away, branded unstable. The world had chosen to forget her, not because she was wrong, but because remembering her was too uncomfortable. For years, she made no public appearances, no Fashion Week cameos, no nostalgic reunions. The other supermodels moved on with memoirs, campaigns, reality shows. Karen was the only one who didn't return. Her absence became its own kind of presence, a shadow cast over an era that claimed to be golden, but had left her bruised and invisible. In 2010, she briefly resurfaced. A few photos surfaced. She appeared fragile, but present. Her expression was softer, older. But behind her eyes was the same unspoken ache. She gave a short interview in which she thanked her fans and said she was at peace. But no comeback followed, no revival. She wasn't here to rebuild, just to remind the world, however briefly, that she still existed. Some blamed the industry, others blamed the pressure. Some whispered about mental illness, others about conspiracies too complex to trace. The truth was likely all of it, and none of it. Because Karen's collapse wasn't the result of one moment. It was the accumulation of hundreds unseen, unspoken, unhealed. She had entered fashion with no armor, only beauty, only grace. And those things, no matter how radiant, are not enough to protect a soul from being consumed. Karen Mulder gave everything the industry asked for: her face, her silence, her mystery. And when she finally gave her truth, it wasn't what they wanted. So they turned away, and she walked out the side door. No flashbulbs, no farewell. Just a woman who once made the world hold its breath, choosing, at last, to exhale in private. Karen Mulder was never meant to last in a system that feeds on silence. Her beauty was timeless, but her truth was inconvenient. In an era that worshipped perfection, she dared to shatter the illusion. And the world responded the only way it knew how, by erasing her. But erasure doesn't mean absence. Her image still lingers in forgotten editorials, in runway footage that feels like a dream, in the ghost of every supermodel who came after her. She was the blueprint no one dared to copy, the angel who refused to stay quiet. Her legacy is not a comeback story. It's a warning, a reminder that even the most radiant faces carry shadows, that fame does not equal protection, that speaking up can cost everything and still be worth it. Karen Mulder didn't disappear because she broke. She disappeared because she refused to play along. And maybe, just maybe, she's still out there quiet, watching, finally free.